Welcome into this episode of Coach's Corner, our summer edition. And sometimes during the summer, we get these new coaches and such hired, and it's a good time to bring them in and talk to them. And we got Weston Franklin in today,
Yes, sir.
who is now stepping in as strength and conditioning coach. And good to have you along. And how you liking Ponca City so far?
Yeah, so getting to Ponca City, it's pretty new for me. A little bit of my background. I'm a OSU graduate. I did my last 7 years there, so I did 2 years of 2 years of graduate work, my master's, and then switched degree a couple times undergrad. So I ended up being a total of 5 years undergrad with a semester kind of off. Was in Stillwater for 7 years. And I'm from Dallas Fort Worth area.
Okay, DFW. Okay.
Yeah, so
now,
Flower Mound.
You say Dallas Fort Worth. Now,
Yeah.
usually when somebody says Dallas, they never really mean Dallas. So
yeah,
where are
that's
you
the thing.
from?
Yeah, so Flower Mound.
Flower Mound,
Especially
okay.
people up here in Oklahoma, if you're not familiar with Dallas Fort Worth, that's kind of what I say.
And Flower Mound's had a history of producing some pretty good Oklahoma State athletes as well.
No, for sure. We had a couple, like Jake Springfield was one of our tackles last year. I played football with him back in the day. So definitely. So Ponca City was a whole new area for me. I know the Edmond area a little bit just because it's a little bit kind of one of the bigger cities close to Stillwater and then OKC. But I haven't kind of gone up north, so going to Ponca City, all learning kind of this area is pretty new.
Yeah,
it's been pretty cool.
Well,
check it all out.
Strength and conditioning, when you see that and on the resume it says Rob Glass, it sticks out right away. And pretty much if you go through Oklahoma State and you're doing strength and conditioning, you don't have Rob Glass on that resume, something's probably wrong, right?
Yeah, no,
but,
for sure.
But talk about. And Rob, with the ties he has to Ponca City, you ask him, he can tell you all about Ponca. In fact, some of the weight room, some of the stuff that he helped with. So when you look at what Rob was able to teach you and how you're going to use that now going forward, talk about the influence of Rob Glass on you.
Well, so Coach Glass was just a great mentor. He's obviously one of the highest respected people in the industry. Everybody in Oklahoma knows who Coach Glass is. If you're in strength conditioning, you know who Coach Glass is. That's just because of the work he's done and the results he's produced, and a big fact of OSU being such a dominant factor with football the last 20 years is doing the fact with Coach Glass. So he's been great to learn from. I've learned so much, and a lot of my philosophy comes from Coach Glass. He's a big Olympic lifting coach, and so I like doing Olympic lifts as well and seeing how that translates to athletes. I know there's some pushback and some strength coaches, they don't like doing Olympic lifts,
right.
But I love seeing it with the athletes and really can see it translate in the field and see that kind of power development really come from the weight room and then how you see it on the football field. So really great on that. And then Coach Glass, any opportunity to learn from, even the smallest little things. The big thing with OSU football and Coach Glass is the little things.
Right.
And the discipline. And, I think, especially as a young athlete, you hear that all the time. You're like, who cares about picking up a little piece of trash off the ground? Or who cares about having my foot in the line? Or who cares about doing that little thing right? But once you get a little bit older, or once you finally clicks, that's when you realize, okay, well, maybe, these things actually do. The little things build, and it builds a successful program, successful culture and team.
Well, and that's the thing. I think when people talk about culture in athletics, culture starts in strength and conditioning a lot of times. And you've heard Mike Gundy say this. People that are close to Oklahoma State say this all the time. Rob Glass, probably the second most important coach outside of Mike Gundy there is, because he's with those guys more than any other coach. Now, the other guys get them during practice, film sessions, all this, but all through the season, off season, they're in touch with Coach Glass because they are having to keep their strength and conditioning up. And so the strength and conditioning coach is de facto, maybe doesn't get the attention that others do, but kind of de facto can be the second most important person at a program based on how much time they spend with the kids, especially when it comes to developing culture.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's such a big thing. Like you kind of hit it in the beginning of that. Like, as a strength coach, you spend more time more so than with the athletes and their sport coach will. Whether it's football, basketball, whatever sport it may be, like they're with you.
Yeah.
And so something I think is very unique about being a strength coach compared to a sport coach, and sometimes there's been some crossover, especially in the high school setting where, they may not have a dedicated strength coach. So a football coach that may be a little knowledgeable in the weight room may kind of feel that duty, but with being a strength coach, I don't care if you miss a tackle on Friday night. Or on baseball, if, on a Tuesday night game, you struck out and went over 4 and had 4 strikeouts. Or if you're a basketball player and you only scored 3 points and you went, 3 for 15. Like, I'm going to treat you the same in the weight room every time.
Yeah, you care about the athlete and their struggles or their accomplishments, but you treat them the same because no matter what, their goal is to get better every day in your room.
And so regardless of how they do in the field, like I have a chance to help them grow, and especially with young high school athletes, their bodies are growing so much already. If we, if we're doing things right, from when they walk in the room as a freshman and they walk out as a senior, it'll be a totally different person.
Yeah, and that can lead to the next thing, and I'm sure you've talked and got mentored on this a little bit. There's changes in the body from 18 to 22, 24 as these college athletes get older with the portal and everything else. But once you usually get 18, your body, as far as your height, everything is developed.
Yeah.
High school, it's a different story. You get these kids, you'll dip down into teaching basics even in junior high. But, you look at a freshman. I'll take myself, for instance. You can probably give your example. I mean, I was a $120 as a freshman. By the time I graduated, as a 170.
Yeah.
And your body transforms so much. So how much of that do you take into account with strength and conditioning and how you kind of train and what you do based on people growing into their own bodies, both male and female?
Well, I think it's a major thing, especially with these high school kids. If I expect a kid that's 14, just now getting out of junior high, that's starting with me in the summer and, be a freshman in the fall, and then a kid that's 17, 18, starting their senior year, that's maybe been in the strength program for 2, 3, 4 years now. And this high school kid or the freshman may have never, lifted before, whether that become just didn't have the resources at junior high or whatever else. So I think it's super fundamental to kind of look at each individual and see where they're at. Not expecting everybody to hit the same weight, have the same form, technique. You got to kind of meet each athlete where they are. Especially for these middle school and high school kids kind of coming from middle school, joining the high school, is just working the fundamentals. That's a big thing I'm a believer in, is because
you'll hurt yourself if you don't.
Exactly. And the biggest thing being a strength coach, obviously I want you to get bigger, faster, stronger, but I need you healthy and safe in the weight room. Because if you're big, fast, and strong, but you got hurt because you're doing a max out lift and you can't play on Friday or Thursday or Wednesday or whatever day it may be for your sport, does us no good.
Yeah, and I can remember, you talked about football coaches. I grew up in Class C football. Our football coach was the strength coach. I mean, that was it. And he did the best he could. But I remember basketball season, you go lift weights, and everybody wanted to get bigger, faster, stronger, and have that translate on the field or the court. But, you'd have a game on Thursday, and here you are, you'd be working out, and he's doing it the best he could. But, I'd go up to practice on a Wednesday, and I couldn't shoot because my arms are jello.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's where we're seeing a big influx of strength and conditioning, how important it is on the high school level, because these coaches understand that we aren't studying this. I mean, there's a new study comes out every week. I'm sure you can listen to, and you're looking at. I mean, it's something that's constantly changing, and you got to get better at. And coaches need to dedicate their time to the field. So having a strength and conditioning coach frees them up for that and lets you handle that, and also allows you. Once again, a coach is thinking the overall, maybe they're not individualization. For you can sit in there and individualize for those kids.
Absolutely. Especially I have the expertise to say, okay, hey, this 17-year-old guy that's going to be our starting interior offensive lineman, he's a little more built, he can do a heavy squat, that kind of stuff. What about that 14-year-old kid that has some potential and could be, a guy for you come Friday nights and be one of your offensive linemen, but he's not where the other kid is yet. So then I can kind of break that down and then work on some of the basics. So before we start putting a bunch of weight on their back, we can squat properly. So we can be safe, and then you're going to get stronger from it too because you're doing it the right way. And so it'll translate in that sense.
Well, and there's so many other intricacies with it too, because let's look at, I'll bring up Colin Oliver because you're down there doing him. What's he known for? His first step.
Yeah.
What if you have a kid that you want to work with and he's a D end and his first step isn't great?
Yeah.
It's like the strength is there. He's got the speed, but he just can't get that first step. There's things you can do to help them get a little bit more explosive on that first step, for instance. So, that's the kind of stuff that you can do.
Yeah, for sure. And so, I can look at, and so spring football has just started this last week with Ponca City up here. And so I've been out with Coach Rowland and doing some pre-practice stretch and post-practice stretch stuff with the athletes. And during that first practice, I kind of stood around a little bit and watched and just kind of observed things and say, okay, hey, I'm noticing this is something we can work on.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe that first step is a little slower. So maybe what's something I can program throughout the summer and then going up into the fall before the season starts where we can kind of address that and kind of get that a little bit better. Or think, okay, hey, our receivers are looking a little slow on our fades or something like that. Maybe we need to work some sprints or stuff like that. Or, hey, the end of practice, we're toast. We just need to work on some conditioning. So absolutely. So I have the great opportunity to sit there and sometimes analyze what's going on and then take what I see. And then I'll meet with the coach, of course, as well, and say, hey, coach, where do you feel like the team can get better? Where are we lacking? And actually this past week, as I've kind of gotten situated in the role and everything, met with almost all the sport coaches so far about Summer Pride, and then if they're training with Summer Pride, their goals, and saying, okay, hey, we need to work on this, this, and this. So then I can start creating a program rather than just saying, okay, these are high school kids playing this sport, let's do this. But what are we lacking? So what do we need to build up to make it a full, well-rounded athlete and team? So.
Yeah. Well, and another thing I think to mention, this goes back to the strength and conditioning kind of being one of those that sees everything. Weight room champions usually are your champions on the field of play. Mm-hmm. Like the ones that come in there, and once again, you mentioned the little things. They go in there and they do the fundamentals right. They go in there, they're not playing around. They're going in there and they're leading other kids to be better as well. If you've ever watched the documentary on the Florida Gators with Urban Meyer and Tim Tebow, he was that guy. That's Tim Tebow probably wouldn't have had much respect based on who he was and the culture he was around, but the fact that he went in there, he led in that weight room, and that made him a different type of animal there and got that respect from those others. But that's stuff that sometimes the coaches may not understand. You can go to the coach and saying, hey, here's what they're doing in the weight room. They're bringing these kids along. They're working, doing all the little things right. And all of a sudden that coach says, you know what, maybe this kid's the second team. We need to try him on the first team. All of a sudden. That communication right there is so important with the strength and conditioning coach to be able to have those assessments in the weight room, not just on the weight side of things, but the mental and the drive and all that, and tell that coach, hey, here's what they're doing, so they can get their chance.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's the thing I've met with coaches this last week, kind of talked about, and saying, hey, whether that be in the Summer Pride program for the summer, are you going to be available in the weight room? And then if so, during the school year as well, kind of what that looks like. And so a lot of the coaches, they have to teach as well, so they can't be in there. And so I was like, well, something I would love to keep up then as school turns on, we get to that kind of phase, which I know it's a little ways away, but just wanted to go ahead and get it out there and have that communication, kind of like you're saying, is I'd love for to build like a report almost, in like a weekly or monthly, or kind of we'll figure it out based on every sport and something, and saying, okay, hey, here's our 20 athletes for the sport. So let's just say like girls basketball, 20 athletes right here. And then a few key metrics we're going to track. So maybe this would be like a monthly report and saying, okay, hey, we got better on these 3 lifts.
Right.
And seeing, okay, our vertical's going up. And then keeping absences as well. Seeing, hey, okay, are these athletes actually showing up? Or if not, then coach can get on them. Because if coaches can't be there, I can say as much as I can, but if they're skipping my class and they're not in the room, it does no good. And then so I can also say, hey, athlete A was here every day. Mm-hmm. They busted their butt. They were locked in the entire time, and they had everybody around them locked in as well, encouraging them, like you were saying before. And that translates. More often than not, those athletes that are doing the little things right, disciplined, and pulling along their teammates are going to do that same thing on the field, on the court, wherever that may be.
Yeah, in high school sports, I think one that you mentioned, there's nobody does it better in Bixby High School. Mm-hmm. And, college, we got Rob Glass and Smitty and Norman. He's good at what he does as well. Does it always translate to wins? No, what you do doesn't. Coaches have to do their part as well. Mm-hmm. But, I look at Bixby, what they've done with their strength and conditioning programs, the reason they're this juggernaut in the state of Oklahoma, because that translates over. And it just isn't just one sport. It's multiple sports a lot of times that this stuff happens, because it just creates not just a culture for a sport, a culture for a whole entire university, a culture for a whole entire, and I see that at Oklahoma State, knowing Rob and being friends with Gary Calcagno. Mm-hmm. There's all these guys, and they have this. They work so well together with the coaches and everybody else, and they've created this whole culture that bleeds over to every sport.
Absolutely, and I think that's something when I met with Joe Turner, the athletic director, he was saying it's like the culture. These kids may be multi-sport athletes, so they may be hearing different messages from some different coaches. Kind of they preach one thing in football,
right?
Basketball may say this, and then you go play baseball in the spring, and they may be saying this too. But in the weight room, I can provide. They're going to be in the weight room regardless of what sport you're in and what time of year it is.
They better
with me. Yeah, they better be. If they're not, we got some work to do.
Yeah.
So they'll be in the weight room, and I can provide that constant, set of culture and expectations, what the standard is. And so even now I've kind of gotten the opportunity to meet some of the athletes, especially with football right now, because they're starting to practice. So I've been out there a couple times, kind of already starting to set that standard of, hey, we're going to do it right. And if we're not going to do it right, we'll restart. We'll do it again. This is the expectation. This is the culture we're going to build. Meeting with Coach Rowland, the football coach as well. I know he's big on that as well. And so that will work with our football athletes. And then when they go to basketball in the winter, once football's over, they already have that ingrained in them. And then especially just like how you were saying in the weight room, it touches everybody.
Stop and do it again. And I'm sure you probably wanted to get out of there on a day under Rob Glass and Gary and all those guys, and you got 10 minutes to go, and all of a sudden people are joking around, and all of a sudden it's like, we're doing it all again, guys.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
that's something that happens. It's like, no, we got our however allotted time. You're going to go hard the whole time, and if you don't go hard, it's 50 minutes. You don't go hard 40. You go hard 49. Don't do 50. We'll start it over.
Yeah. And the great thing with that too, it takes one time.
Yeah. No, it's usually
if it's one or two guys, the other 50 that had to restart will get on
police themselves.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's how it works. So, well, we're excited to have you up here. Looking forward to seeing what you can do overall, taking over the program, and what are your goals to kind of get, as we leave, kind of accommodated over the summer? And like I said, you've already kind of dealt with football a little bit, and you got summer pride that's going. But what are the things that you want to do to get your foot in the door? I wouldn't say with coaches, but the kids in the community.
Well, I think the big thing with the kids is, setting that culture, the discipline, doing all the little things right. With Coach Glass being my mentor and working with OSU football the last couple of years, like, that's a big thing. It's always being preached down there. And so I've obviously seen how that translates. So I bring that in my own philosophy as well. And so developing that culture and that expectation. And then, being hard on the kids. But, if for whatever reason something happens and I have to be hard on the kid, after the workout, bring him, put my arm around him and say, hey, you know why I was upset you did this or this happened or whatever? And explain it. So, you get more buy-in from the kids that way. Because if you're just yelling and yelling and yelling, kids aren't going to...
You got to have a relationship.
Yeah, exactly. And so they're just going to turn away from you, and they're going to stop listening. And then you have no relationship, like you're saying, and they don't care. And they're going to skip weight class because Coach Franklin, all he does is yell at me because I don't squat deep enough. But then if I go and say, hey, athlete, you're not squatting deep enough. We need to get down here, because if you're not going to be able to get low enough in your stance or your sport or whatever it may be, and just to be safe and all the other reasons. So providing that why, I think, is a big thing. So I'm really excited for that, kind of developing relationship with athletes. I've already had a few football guys come up and introduce themselves to me once I was introduced to the team, and then kind of after these first few days of practice, and they're excited to get to work. So.
Well, and one thing I can say is a lot of times they'll be like, "Hey, we want to see you lift weights," and you can get in there and show them how it's done, and I mean, it'd be like, "Hey, here's the example right here."
Yeah.
And I think the last thing for you, and you grew up in the DFW area with Oklahoma State. You're with the legendary strength and conditioning coach with Rob Glass. What's your goals in this career? You said you switched a few times before you found strength and conditioning, and knowing that, Ponca City is going to be a part of that journey, what is your ultimate goal? What do you want to achieve in this field?
Man, that's a tough question. I think I just want to be able to give back. A big thing for me, I played football in high school, did a track and field, I was shot putting through. Wasn't too good at football. I honestly just did the shot put with track and field just because the football coach would say, hey, go do track. So I was like, okay, I guess I will. But what really kind of I enjoyed, well, I showed up every day, other than the fact I had to, of course, but was the weight room. And I had a great relationship with my strength coach at Flower Mound High School, Parker Lyles. And so Coach Lyles and he was also the shot put coach, oddly enough, too. So we also kind of furthered that there. And I actually just reached out to him, letting him know I got the job at Ponca City, and we talked a little bit about that. But the way he gave back to me and kind of helped me, find the passion and the love for weightlifting and strength conditioning, all that kind of stuff, and then always having the opportunity to come back to him and say, hey, Coach, I'm a sophomore now, and I'm learning this, and, go back in the summer and kind of talk with him, and, kind of build those relationships. So I think it's a big thing, is just building relationships with athletes that are just the 1, 2, 3, 4 years they're with me, but those kind of lifelong kind of deals where, okay, hey, if I'm here and they just graduated, they come back after, their summer, they're at school or wherever else it may be, and come train for a couple of weeks, in the weight room, have an open weight room. So I think definitely that, and then obviously just building that culture. That's a big goal of mine, is the expectation and the standard is set. What to do, you're going to do it right, and we're going to succeed. So
sounds good. Well, looking forward to the work you do, and get out there and get them bigger, faster, stronger, all that good stuff.
Absolutely.
And appreciate you telling your story today, and we'll see you out there on the field and courts of play.
Yes, sir.
All right, that's going to do it for our Coach's Corner today. And once again, Weston Franklin, appreciate you being in with us, new strength and conditioning coach here in Ponca City. Thanks to Chris behind the camera. Jordan Woodruff saying until next time, go Cats.